Chapter 1. Coming Home. I came home after 14 years. Not because I forgave anyone. Not because someone asked me to. But because my mother called and said, in a voice like glass breaking under a blanket, "Your father is dying." No hello. No how are you. Just that one sentence, like a diagnosis. Cold. Final. I stood outside the old house for a long time. It hadn't changed, same peeling white paint, same cracked steps on the porch, same wind chimes that never chimed unless the wind was angry. Behind that door was everything I ran from. And everything I never really stopped missing. The curtains were still the same. Thin, yellowing, hand-stitched. Mom used to wash them by hand, even when the washing machine broke. She said machines didn't understand fabric the way she did. Funny, the things you remember when you're standing on a threshold. I stepped inside, dragging a suitcase full of clothes and silence. Mom stood in the hallway. Rigid. Thin. Hair pulled back into the same severe bun she wore when I was a child, not a strand out of place. Her hands were folded in front of her, like they always were when she didn't know what to do with them. "Hi," I said. She nodded. That was all. The house as a memory-rich description. The house was too quiet. Even the walls seemed to be holding their breath. Everything smelled like memory, floor polish, old cinnamon, dust, and the kind of silence that has weight to it. It wrapped around me, familiar and suffocating, like a sweater knitted from old grudges and unspoken words. I walked into the living room. There it was, the hospital bed. Propped up beneath the window. A machine beeping softly. A tray table with a glass of water, untouched. My father lay there. Smaller than I remembered. Pale skin pulled tight across cheekbones, a blanket tucked up to his chest like he was already half in the grave. He didn't open his eyes. I stood there for a while, watching him breathe like it was a task, wondering how it was possible to love someone, hate someone, and miss someone all in the same heartbeat. Hint at the deeper family rift, her choices. The last time I stood in this room, he told me I was destroying this family. His words exactly. "You've chosen shame over your blood." He meant Mikita. The boy I loved. The wrong kind of boy, by his standards. Different skin. Different beliefs. Different dreams. But to me, he was simply kind. And that was enough. Apparently, kindness was the worst kind of rebellion in our house. They didn't scream. They didn't throw me out. They just closed the door behind me one night. And never opened it again. Back to the present, fragile interaction with the mother. Now I sat in the same kitchen I used to sneak cookies from as a child. Mom sat across from me, sipping tea like it was a performance. We didn't speak. We never really did. Not about real things. There had always been a wall between us, transparent but bulletproof. We could see each other, but we never touched. I stared at the clock ticking above the stove and finally asked, "Why didn't you ever write to me?" She didn't blink. Just stared at her mug for a while, then said quietly, "Every time I picked up a pen, my hands shook. I didn't know if you wanted to hear from me." Silence was easier. I almost laughed. Because for her, silence was always easier. Building emotional tension, repressed grief, subtle anger. I wanted to tell her. Tell her how I gave birth without her. How I held my daughter in a hospital room lit with loneliness. How I cried when I realized I didn't know how to swaddle her and wished for just one word from the woman who once swaddled me. But I didn't say any of that. Because what would have been the point? Words were never our currency. Omissions were. End of Chapter 1. Transition into deeper family memory in next. Later that evening, I stood in the doorway to my old bedroom. The wallpaper hadn't changed, still soft yellow with tiny blue flowers. Still that childhood photo on the shelf. Me in a pink dress, holding a balloon, before I knew what it meant to disappoint people. I sat on the bed. It creaked like it remembered me. And I let myself remember too. Not the pain. Not yet. Just the little girl who used to pray to be seen, to be heard, and maybe, one day, to be loved exactly as she was. Chapter 2. The Breaking Point. I remember that day like it's carved into my skin. I was 17. Just on the edge of everything, between childhood and what I thought was freedom. Mikita had come to see me at school. He was nervous, fumbling with his backpack, his cheeks flushed from running. I hid behind the schoolyard fence, waiting to sneak away. He was from a different world. Different faith, different skin color, different dreams than my parents expected. But when he smiled at me, all that difference melted. We shared a secret bench in the park, carved our initials into the bark of a tree. It was ours, a small rebellion against a world that told us we didn't belong. Family pressure mounts. But home was a battlefield. Dad's disappointment was an unspoken war. His eyes hardened whenever my name came up. Mom tried to stay neutral, but her silence was louder than any argument. One evening, after a quiet dinner, Dad finally broke. He said words that shattered everything. "You're a disgrace to this family. You think love is enough. You've chosen shame over blood." I tried to explain. To tell him that love didn't ask for permission. That Mikita was kind, honest, and true. But none of it mattered. That night, I packed my things. The leaving, painful, decisive. I left in the dark. No goodbyes. No promises. Just the echo of the front door closing behind me. I thought I was running toward freedom. But freedom was lonely. Cold. No one called. No one looked back. First years away, loneliness, struggle, growth. The first years were the hardest. I moved from place to place, cheap apartments, strangers' couches. I worked long hours, studied at night. Mikita and I tried to hold on, but the distance and the scars pulled us apart. Still, I never forgot the bench, the tree, the small carved letters. Reflection on family, choices, and regrets. Now, sitting here, I wonder. Did they know how much it hurt? Did they see how my heart broke every time the phone stayed silent? Or was I just another failure? A chapter they wished to erase? Closing Chapter 2, hinting at the tentative return and healing. When Mom called with the news, I was afraid. Not of him dying, but of what would die inside me if I didn't come back. I didn't know if I could forgive. But maybe, just maybe, I could begin to understand. Chapter 3. Tentative Healing. The days after I arrived were heavy with silence. Not the sharp kind, but the quiet that fills the space when words are too heavy to say. Dad was weaker now, thinner, more fragile than I ever imagined. He didn't say much, but his eyes sometimes flickered when I entered the room. Mom kept busy, cleaning, cooking, pretending everything was normal. But nothing was normal anymore. The first conversation, hesitant, awkward. One afternoon, I found Mom in the kitchen, peeling potatoes. I stood there, waiting for the right words, but they never came. Finally, I said, "Why didn't you ever write to me? Just one letter." She stopped peeling. Looked at me, eyes tired but soft. "I wanted to. I tried. But I was scared." Scared you wouldn't want to hear from me. Scared I'd say the wrong thing. Her voice cracked, and for the first time, I saw the woman beneath the armor. Conversation with Dad, unspoken apologies and regrets. Later, I sat by Dad's bedside. His breathing was shallow, the beeping machines slow and steady. He opened his eyes and looked at me. No anger. Just regret. He mouthed words I barely heard. I'm sorry. It wasn't much, but it was everything. I took his hand. We didn't need more words. Reflecting on forgiveness, a difficult journey. Forgiveness isn't a moment. It's a journey. A winding path through anger, pain, and memories. I'm still walking that path. Some days I stumble. Other days, I find light. The last moments saying goodbye. When Dad passed, I held Mom's hand. We didn't speak much. But in the quiet, we shared a bond forged in pain and hope. The silence between us wasn't empty anymore. It was full of possibility, ending with reflection and hope. Families are complicated. They break. They heal. Sometimes, all we can do is hold on to the moments that matter. And hope that's enough. Chapter 4, Moving Forward. The house feels different now. The echoes of the past still linger in the corners, soft reminders of what was and what could have been. But the silence. It's no longer a wall. It's a space to breathe. A space to begin again. Rebuilding relationships, slow and fragile. Mom and I don't talk every day. We don't always understand each other. But we share moments now. A cup of tea in the morning. A quiet walk in the garden. The kind of small things that stitch broken hearts together. Reflecting on motherhood, a new chapter. My daughter calls me Mom. Sometimes I see her in the mirror. That little girl I used to be, full of hope and fear. I tell her stories. Not all the painful ones. But the ones about kindness, courage, and love. Acceptance and gratitude. I've learned that love isn't perfect. It's messy. It's hard. But it's what keeps us going. Closing lines, hopeful, open-ended. So I keep walking. One step at a time. Carrying the past with me, but looking toward the future. Because sometimes, the loudest thing, in the silence between us, is hope.